What excites me with what's been happening with it is I've heard from a variety of people that, oh, I bought this for my daughter, or I bought this for my teenager, and then once I got it, I wanted to keep it for myself. So I've been excited to hear that as feedback. And another bit of feedback I had is my 23-year-old son, who was very honest with me. He picked it up when I showed him after it was published. He picked it up and he started reading it, and he's like, wow, I really don't want to put this down. Like, this is really good. And he, being a son, of course, he would be like, oh yeah, nice, Mom. And then, toss it down if it didn't have much interest. My sons aren't all about like boosting my ego a whole lot. So he would have given it to me straight. So the fact that he didn't want to put it down, that makes me proud about it as well. But the main thing is, again, it's the bite-sized pieces of information, the interactive. I leave people with empowerment strategies. I give them exercises to do about each one of the different pieces of the framework I talked about. I talk about how the self-awareness piece is where most people get caught up. The self-acceptance, all of that is a process for sure. But if we don't truly have a good self-awareness, then we're going to build all of that on false information.
Okay, here we are back on Living the Next Chapter, and I have a great guest with me who's got big news, lots of big stuff happening, big stuff, which is great. My author is coming on today to talk about her author journey and all of the great things happening in her world. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Hey, Elle, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you doing?
Awesome. It's so awesome to have you back. We chatted a little while ago together and made a connection, which is awesome. And you have a little bit of news. Can we share just a little bit about some of the great stuff that's happening for you and workspace that you're pulling together? Can you give us a little teaser?
Absolutely. I was a stay-at-home mom for 25 years, and I loved it, but it was a bit isolating at times. And now I've turned solopreneur, which I love, but again, a bit isolating. So I decided to create what I don't have, which is community. I've moved recently, so I don't know too many people in the town. I'm tired of working in coffee shops, so I'm opening up a flexible workspace in the area, and I found a 1910 farmhouse that has since been restored into offices. So I have purchased that building, and I'm super excited to open this up in Troy, Ohio.
Congratulations. What a great idea. Well, that is so amazing.
Thank you.
What are your expectations for the future of this? How are you going to market this? How are you going to present this to your community as a new space to work?
I'm going to market it in terms of course, social media, but then also through the chamber and just going around and meeting people and talking to people. I feel like it kind of gives me an excuse to introduce myself and start talking to people that I may not do otherwise, letting them know that there's something new coming to town that they might be able to find some value in. And I think it's going to work great for moms who need a space to go a couple hours a week to get things done uninterrupted, remote workers, entrepreneurs. I'm going to have all kinds of training, business trainings to help support one another in whatever journey that we happen to be in. You can be as much of a part of the community or just pop in and do your work and leave. And I'm even going to offer a podcast recording room too. So I'm very excited about that.
I'm so happy to hear you have that in your plans as well. That is well needed. And I think that could open the doors for anyone to get out and share their message. So congratulations. And we're going to be following along on the journey, and we'll have links and stuff in the show notes as they become available to send people along to watch you build this new amazing space in an old building with history. That's exciting. So really, really cool. Let's switch gears over to Living the Next Chapter and your author journey. I'm so, again, when I get the chance to sit down with an author and kind of pick away a little bit and get a little taste of the story behind how you got to where you are today, what inspires you, and why your message matters. I just love unpacking that for people, because you take us on the journey, and just like you're going to be doing with your new workspace in our episode today, you're just going to be unpacking how we got here and then kind of taking us on a journey of where we're going. So let's rewind a little bit and kind of go back in your journey and bring us up to date, and so that we have some context to what you're writing about right now.
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned, I was a stay-at-home mom for 25 years. I raised 3 boys, and it just so happened that the same year I was empty nesting, we also divorced. So I found myself completely surrounded by my whole family, and now all of a sudden, all independent, just me, trying to figure things out as an individual for the very first time in my life. In doing so, I decided that in order to grow, I needed to go. So I sold the house, most of my belongings, packed up what I had left, and moved from Chicago to San Diego, where I didn't know anybody, to start life over as me, trying to figure out what that looked like. In the process, I realized that I needed to do some work on myself too. We tend to easily point the finger, in other people's directions when things go awry in our lives. And I needed to look inward and figure out, how did I contribute to this? What do I need to do? And in that process, I realized that it was my emotional intelligence that was not very strong. And I didn't have a good sense of myself to be able to lean into a strong emotional intelligence. And so I started working on that. And at the same time, I was working in a middle school, and all of the kids, just so many of them, and this is pre-pandemic, were telling me how much anxiety they had and how much stress, and they felt very comfortable opening up and talking to me. And I was very focused on trying to give them practical solutions in a way that helped them be able to rely on themselves and not be so codependent or reliant on other people. And so I took my emotional intelligence that I was learning and helped apply it to the kiddos. So I became a certified practitioner. And just as I was about to go to the school and say, hey, can we do an after-school club about empowerment, self-intelligence for the kids, the pandemic hit and there was no school, so there was no after-school club. Once we resumed back into in-person, the school district was given extra money for lost learning. So in the summer, they could offer classes to the middle schoolers, and it could be a variety of subjects. It didn't have to be your typical math, science, social studies. So I applied to teach Feel Empowered every day, and I was accepted, and I had 30 hours of curriculum that I wrote and presented to the kids and helped give them just a completely different perspective on themselves, on how to handle themselves, on how to deal with other people. And I talked to them in a way that I don't think they're often talked to by parents and teachers in terms of empowerment and learning to rely on yourself and lean into yourself and figure out who you are and your work ethic and all kinds of things we discussed. While I was teaching that class, the kids were taking notes in this lots of different colored pens, and they were drawing and doodling all around it. And they were so excited to show me these journals that they were creating about the content that I was teaching. And that's what led me to why I'm with you now.
So your students inspired this. That's unique.
Absolutely.
Huh. So when you saw them working on in writing along and participating in this way, were you kind of having a moment where you're watching them going, what are they doing? Like, why are they connecting with this in the way they are? were you kind of watching it as a spectator in that moment and going, wait a minute, there's an idea here?
Not really. It didn't hit me yet. I had known about bullet journaling. Okay. I had done it a little bit while I was home with my kids as a way to try to figure out how to be organized and things like that. And at the time, I had no plans to write a book. I was not thinking along those lines at all. In fact, I introduced the kids to TED Talks. And one of the students asked me, they said, why don't you do a TED Talk? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not ready for that or whatever. And then one day I got on a tangent about something and I just went on. And she, when I finished, she said, and that's your TED Talk. So I learned just as much from them about myself as they were learning about themselves in this whole process. It was my first time writing curriculum. It was my first time actually teaching beyond teaching my kids and their friends, a variety of things throughout the years. In fact, after I took this idea and I turned it into a business, and I've made a variety of webinars. And I told my youngest son one time, he was struggling with something. I said, you should really watch my webinar. And he said, Mom, my whole life has been a webinar with you. So, I learned more in this whole process that I am a natural teacher, and but that really wasn't the route that I wanted to go because of the constrictions that you have in this school setting and so forth. So it was a little while after that I decided, you know what, I think I have so much in me through my personal process of everything that I went through. And then wishing I have no regrets in life, but I do wish I would have understood this about myself much younger. Even in the teenage years, I thought, oh my gosh, if I go back and I had this self-intelligence as a teenager growing up, I would have felt that much more empowered going throughout my life instead of swinging on a pendulum between feeling powerless and then overcompensating and trying to be too powerful. So, I had a strong desire to help teenagers, young adults, parents, a variety. And so I thought, how can I reach more of the masses with this information? And I created true to my personality. I took the emotional intelligence model that I learned and I had to spin it and tweak it in my own way. So that's where I came up with my own self-intelligence framework. And I was sitting down, I was starting to write a book, and I was doing it the typical way of trying to write out the chapters. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a lot. And I don't know that it's really going to hit the audience that I want it to hit, because I don't really know of any teenagers that are going to willingly pick up a book about emotional intelligence or self-intelligence and read chapter after chapter. So that's when all of a sudden I remembered the kids taking bullet journal style notes, and I had taken pictures of them because they were so well done. And that's what inspired me. I'm like, I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to make this more of an interactive, kind of also, informative, but also, where they feel like they're a part of it with me instead of just, this is, everything I'm trying to tell you and teach you.
Okay. So for those people that are listening to us right now and they're yelling at their speakers, please help me understand self-intelligence. I want to know. I've never heard this term before, and I am completely curious. I gotta know more about this. Can we just take a little sidestep and go down that path for a moment and get your view on this? Because I can see people going, yay, they're going to talk about self-intelligence now. Can we just kind of stop there for a moment and just bring people up to that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the self-intelligence framework that helped me, and then I've now developed to help others, begins with self-awareness. And then it goes into self-understanding. And then once we understand ourselves, then we need to accept ourselves and accept these things about ourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And then beyond accepting, we go into self-embracement, where we learn to really feel good about our attributes and our natural gifts, and even learn to feel good about ways that we might struggle, because we're now aware of it and we can be mindful and understand it. So then when you have this embracement, then we go into self-management. And now that I have this information in a certain vocabulary about myself, I can treat myself much better. And I believe that everything in life is a relationship, and every single one of those relationships are based on the one that we have with ourselves first. So we take care of that piece, and then we go out into the world and we deal with other people, our family, friends, acquaintances, teachers, coworkers, and then even our relationship with time, money, food, whatever it might be. And we can manage ourselves in a way that is authentic to who we are. And then we feel better about our process and how we're going about it. And that leads into self-empowerment. So then we feel like we have this really good grasp of who we are. We don't have a need to change and try to be like other people. So we take the control over ourselves, and the more control you have over yourself, the less need there is to try to control everything or everyone else around you. Mm-hmm. So that's the self-intelligence framework that I work in.
Okay. That touches on so many topics and so many things that we can go down. So hence why there's now a journal book that can help lead you. See how we did that? We did that really well, right? There's a book to help you now through this. Tell me, what are you most proud of when you think of your book and you think of the impact your book is going to have or is having already? What excites you about this being out in the world now?
What excites me, with what's been happening with it is I've heard from a variety of people that, I bought this for my daughter, or I bought this for my teenager, and then once I got it, I wanted to keep it for myself. So I've been excited to hear that as feedback. And another bit of feedback I had is my 23-year-old son, who was very honest with me. He picked it up when I showed him after it was published. He picked it up and he started reading it, and he's like, wow, I really don't want to put this down. Like, this is really good. And he, being a son, of course, he would be like, oh yeah, nice, Mom. And then, toss it down if it didn't have much interest. My sons aren't all about like boosting my ego a whole lot. So, he would have given it to me straight. So the fact that he didn't want to put it down, that makes me proud about it as well. But the main thing is, again, it's the bite-sized pieces of information, the interactive. I leave people with empowerment strategies. I give them exercises to do about each one of the different pieces of the framework I talked about. I talk about how the self-awareness piece is where most people get caught up. The self-acceptance, all of that is a process for sure. But if we don't truly have a good self-awareness, then we're going to build all of that on false information. And unfortunately, most of us, when we think about that, we see ourselves through lenses that are tainted and smudged with previous experiences, failures, other people's opinions of us, things that have maybe been told to us, good or bad, expectations, comparisons, all of those things. It's very, very hard to strip that down and really look at yourself and say, hey, these are my attributes, and this is where I really contribute nicely to the world, and these are my natural gifts. And then, you know what, this is where I get hung up, and this is where I have some trouble and where I go when I doubt myself. It's really hard to break that down for ourselves. And when you work with somebody to try to go through that process, then of course, even though they're trained, they're still coming to you with the bias and their lens as well, and how they're picking up things about you. So I use the Clifton Strengths Assessment as an unbiased way to be able to give that piece of self-awareness that we struggle with. So it measures 34 traits every single one of us uses, but we all use them differently. And the results that come back of the ranking of those 34 are unlike anybody else in the world. So it doesn't put you in a box or a category or a number or a series of letters like, other people. This is you and you alone. And then that's what helped me understand, like, oh my gosh, there's parts of my personality that are actually my gifts that I never would have considered a gift of mine because I had been chastised for them for years by other people, or I feel like I'm too much, or I don't feel like I'm enough when I look at the bottom, so that the top part of that ranking is super important, but also the bottom is really important too to understand. And so when I think about my bottom, I'm like, oh, I'm not enough because I don't do these things. I stress and these things don't come naturally to me. And that's not the case. It's just my process. And so when you have that vocabulary and you see that unbiased, objective look at how you do things, then that gives you such a good foundation to build this self-intelligence on. And so I talk about that in the book as well.
It's amazing. So one thing I heard you talk about was self-doubt. I heard you mention self-doubt. And self-doubt can lead to a whole thing of, well, who am I to write this book? Who am I to create a workspace for other people, right? Who am I to start a podcast? Who am I to share a message or content with the world? There's so many other people who are much better at this, or whatever. Their skills, their talents, or gifts seem to throw shade on mine. So I have this internal struggle all the time. Can you relate with that on a personal level, and maybe how you powered through that?
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. I think that our bottom strengths show up in our life just as much as our top ones do. And so, for an example, my number 34 out of the 34 is competition, which means that I don't do well when I compare myself to other people. And so now that I realize that about myself, and I can be mindful of that, when I catch myself doing it, because I will do it and I have done it and I still do it, writing a book, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to compare to other people who are writing about the subject? They're so much more experienced than I am, and they have the schooling, and maybe they're a doctor and they have the PhD and all the degrees to go behind this. And I'm just talking about my personal experience and what I've learned and using the knowledge that I've gained around it. But then, don't compare yourself. That doesn't serve you well. What serves you well is connecting with people and feeling where they're at and helping them move them forward. And so when I lean into that part of myself, I'm like, well, it doesn't matter how I compare to everybody else with this. And so I can learn to let that go then. Or if I start overthinking, like with the co-working space, if I overthink it, it's a small town. I don't know if anybody's going to really want to come. What if I don't do this? What if I do that? And I just let myself get on that mental treadmill or, hamster wheel of my thoughts. Now I can catch myself doing that. And instead of letting it lead me down a dark place where then I'm not going to pull the trigger and I'm not going to go for it, again, I can say, overthinking, that doesn't serve me well. So then I bring myself back up to, hey, everything's meant to be. It's all going to work out the way it's supposed to work out, whether it's a hit and everybody loves it or nobody really has an interest, then I turn it into something else. Or I do something different with the property instead, and that's going to be okay too. So once you know your process, then it helps you get past your obstacles.
So when you did the Clifton Strengths process, what was something that really shocked you in the results? You're like, you see it in front of you for the first time, and you're like, what? That's me? Like, really? No. This must be somebody else. That's me, really. Like what stood out to you that was like a real awakening for you when you looked at the results?
Well, when I first got the results that Gallup gives you, I read through them and I thought, this is interesting. I was not thrilled with my number one strength at all, but it didn't have much of an impact on me as a whole. So I honestly put it away. And I'd been taking all kinds of other personality tests and trying to figure myself out during this whole divorce independence process. It wasn't until I was taking part in a leadership conference where a gentleman got on stage and started talking about the Clifton strengths and what they mean in your life. And he brought them to like, he shined this light on them in a way that I didn't pick up reading the report. He brought such a different, personal, spin to them that just helped me apply them to my everyday life. And that's what sparked me. And that's what got me excited. And so everything I do with the strengths, I've learned from him. So as I mentioned, I was not happy with my number one strength, which is woo. It's win others over. And I was a cheerleader all growing up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, woo, I'm 46 years old. Have I not grown out of I'm not a cheerleader anymore? And then when I read the description, oh, you really want people to like you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be dependent on other people's opinions. And I had been, teased for being a flirt growing up. And I'm like, but I'm really not flirting. I genuinely love to connect with people and learn about you. And I'm excitable and bubbly. And, once he talked about them and he gave the perspective, then I was like, wait a minute. Actually, and again, that helped me with the self-intelligence process. Okay, I understand this better now. So I can accept the fact that, yes, woo is my number one. And you know what? I love the fact that I can be in a room with people and enjoy getting to know strangers and try to figure out how to spark up a conversation with somebody in a way that they're going to enjoy it. And it's not just about me. So, and then funny enough, my new partner in life, he is not a woo guy, and he loves the fact that when we're out, I will hold the conversation and carry the conversation, and he can just sit back and be the quiet one. He likes that.
See, and I think just understanding through a tool like this is great because you get an unbiased glimpse into your world, and you can see what other people have been saying to you or see in you that you don't see yourself. Because I think
Yes.
a lot of the time as authors, any type of content creators, we're always judging ourselves and seeing if what we have to offer the world is good enough. But at the same time, there's no one that can share the message that we can because no one else is us. No one else sees the world through us. No one has seen our good days, our bad days. No one has learned the lessons that we have learned. So when we step into the limelight and step up to the microphone or create a new workspace for people to come and share, whatever that is, write a book, we're coming to it with a completely unique perspective that no one can duplicate. And in that alone takes away that imposter syndrome because no one else can do what we can do.
Right.
No one can. And even though there's 1,000 books or 1,000 workplaces or 1,000 podcasts, no one else can do the thing that we can do. And I think that becomes something we can then say, listen, as much as I might doubt myself today, I'm coming with something unique to offer the world, and I can reach somebody that no one else can.
Exactly.
And I can help somebody. So I love that.
Exactly.
That's where you're headed with what you're teaching and sharing. And I love the fact, too, that you're focused originally on students to build the next generation to think this way, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to lead to a better path for them in life when they can get a real good sense of who they are.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm impressed so much with what you're doing and your focus and your heart and your woo.
Thank you.
Because you're doing it. You're doing it.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
So tell me your response from the book again. Tell me what you think this is going to lead to for you in the future. Because I'm always curious to see how this might unlock something.
Yeah.
That had you never written the book and never done this, because you have your book now, what do you feel this is going to lead you to?
Well, first of all, I created the book on Canva. So that is leading me to all kinds of new and exciting projects that I'm doing on Canva as well. Again, I wanted it to be colorful and interactive, and I wanted to make it look as if it was the bullet journal that I created that for myself that I'm now sharing to other people. So I did little sketches in there, and there's places that people can doodle and color in, and all kinds of interactive pages on it. And I made all of that on Canva. So that took a lot of patience that I don't normally have. And so that was very exciting. So I've been doing other projects on Canva as well. And then in the process, I had been known my entire life as Shelley. And in this process of creating my own business and going down this path, I developed a mantra called simplify to amplify. And I even simplified my name. And so I now go by Elle because my Shelley was spelled EY. And so now I've taken out the middle part, ELLE, and and then I even broke my last name down from Burkhart to Hart, HART. So I'm starting a second book now. It's a memoir, and it's called Becoming Elle, and it's my self-intelligence process. So this is going to be a little bit more of, instead of like the bullet points of the gist of things, this is going to be a little bit more of a deeper dive into how I went through and overcame and dealt with everything they did in a variety of challenges throughout my whole life. So that's what I'm starting to work on now as well.
Is it difficult at the beginning stages of writing, Elle, when you have to decide what to include in a book like this and what to exclude? Because I'm just wondering, the things that you might not include in what you're writing, is there value in some of those stories that you're kind of torn? You know, could this help somebody if I include this? But it's really personal, and I don't know if I don't want to share that part right now. Like, is there kind of a give and take as you're writing to figure out what's going to be a part of this next project?
Well, forgive the pun, but I'm an open book. So I naturally share everything about myself. I am who I am, and what you see is what you get. And I'm very open and transparent. However, there are other people in my life. And because I do also have empathy high on my strengths, I worry about how they're going to feel. So I'm protective and careful about the stories that I share that involve other people. So especially my kids and their dad, I don't want it to be something where it's just an airy or dirty laundry. And I definitely don't want it to be something where it's just kind of all the troubles and tribulations. I do have restorative high, so I am about problems, but more so for the solutions of those. And then right after that is a positivity strength. So I talk about the problems and then bring the light and the positive that comes out of things. So I'm hoping it's going to be something that's inspiring and not just kind of, here's the drama of my life.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you ready?
Yep.
I would love for you to do a promo commercial for your new book that's coming in the future. I would love for you to share with our audience, as if we were getting a commercial inserted into our podcast right now, and just tell people what this book is going to be about and who this is for. That's it. Just a real simple, here's my book. It's coming out in the future. Here's the title. and I wrote this book for fill in the blank. What do you think? Can you just do something off the top? You're a writer. You should be able to do this. Off the top of your head.
I'll give it my best shot.
What do you think? What do you think? Like, what a curveball. Okay, I think you can do this because you've already shared so much already. So if we were able to do this into a short little commercial for your book, how would you approach it? And the mic is yours.
Yeah, it won't be polished, but I can definitely give people the idea. So I started out with some of my earliest memories, and then I will take you through the different stages in life and talk about things I experienced, how I felt about them, and then apply, had I known these things about myself that I figured out when I was 46, 48 years old, had I known them when I was younger, how different it might have been. It's a journey of growth, and I know that there's so many people out there like me that, whether it's your job or your family or your kids or friends, whatever it might be, you, and I hate to say the phrase, but lose yourself, or you kind of morph yourself into that. And then all of a sudden at some point in your life, you realize, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel connected to me. I don't feel authentic doing this. I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, or there's more to what is going on right now. I want to help people figure out how they can find their more through my journey.
There's times in our life as parents where we become who people need us to be out of necessity. So we work, we do all the things, we do the laundry, we cook the meals, we go to work, whatever that is, because it's a necessity we need to survive. But then there's a point in the time where you become who you need to be for yourself. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting from our conversation is we really need a really good idea of who we are. And by knowing who we are, then we can help others. Is that kind of, am I on the right road there?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably it will be the empty nesters or about to empty nest that will be most drawn to the information in this book.
Good.
How do I now, because so many people still cling to living through and with their kids and their lives when their kids are adults. And that's posing a lot of issues and problems for both the adult kids and the parents. And I'm hoping that it gives parents the permission to let their kids live their life. You can still be a part of it. You can still support them and be engaged and love on them, of course. But you should be yourself and live your own life now and do some things like write a book, start a business, open a workspace, do some things that you never thought you would do now that you have this time in your life.
And I'm an empty nester, so you have your target audience sitting right in front of you. So I love what you're sharing and what you're bringing to the world. And I love the fact that you're willing to do this, right? You could have just sat on this and went, I think I'll just keep it for myself and I'll use it to help myself. But you are turning this around to say, I have a message to share with the world to help others. And that is something that I celebrate on this podcast, because having people come on and share their message to help people is the reason why this even exists. So I'm so pleased that you have time to come on and talk about this. With all the things you got going on, I really do appreciate it. Where do people connect with you, Elle? How do people find you? Where are you most active? If I have a question and I want to reach out and know that you're going to see my question, where do I go?
You can either go to my website, feelempoweredeveryday.com, and connect with me through the contact form there. I'm also on Instagram, and I put out quite a few videos on a YouTube channel, Feel Empowered Every Day. So those would probably be the best places to connect with me.
Because there's a perception that I'm going to reach out to Elle and I'm going to get your assistant, and I'm like pouring my heart out to your assistant. And you're like,
No.
I'm not. Yeah. So we're reaching out to you and we're talking to you. And that means so much right there that you are willing to do that, because people might be listening to this in the future, and what we've talked about today has meant something to them. And A, they want to thank you, or B, they have a question. So being accessible to your audiences, I can tell that's who you are. So I knew that'd be easy to connect with you.
Yeah. And actually, I have a podcast myself on Spotify, Feel Empowered Every Day. It's a solo podcast. And really what it is it's like my verbal journal entries. And so I wish I was like sitting and talking with a girlfriend. So quite often I'll ask questions. I want it to be interactive and engaging. So if you listen to my podcast, please reach out to me with any of the topics that are on there, because I love to dig in and I love to hear other people's perspectives. I don't think I know it all. I don't claim to know it all. I'm a work in progress, and I like to hear other people's stories and where they're at with things in their life too. So absolutely, when you reach out, you're getting me for sure.
And so if you ever wondered why I like having Elle on the podcast, it's because, again, she's a podcaster. So that's fun for me, because a lot of people who don't understand podcasting don't understand me, Elle. So just so you know. So I feel like we're already friends just in that arena alone. So thank you for that. And we'll have links to all of your contact information, your podcast, this new venture that's coming, all of this stuff for people to follow along on the journey. And Elle, how do we close this off? What is your message to the world? I would love for you to kind of help us close this off.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's said and you see it everywhere, but honestly, be yourself. Don't think that you should be more like somebody else. And the best way to do that is drop expectations, replace them with respectations. Respect yourself and respect other people, and life will be so much more beautiful.
Is that a new word? Respectations? I love it.
It's one of my words.
So not only do you do all this stuff, you create new words for us. Respectations. I love it. Okay, that's my new word for the day. Yeah. Everyone's going to hear me say it all day. So it all came from Elle. So Elle, thank you for being part of the podcast. Again, thank you for lighting up the room today with your smile and your happiness and who you are. And I'm so happy to cross paths with you. Again, I'd say this to others, that I feel that when you meet people in your life that are inspiring, there's a reason why you're meant to meet these people. So for everyone listening and seeing this, meeting you today, I'm sure is going to help them. So thank you for being so willing to share your story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yes, I forgot to say, you can pick up my journal on Amazon. It's the Feel Empowered Everyday Bullet Journal, an interactive guide to build your emotional intelligence by strengthening who you are. And I really appreciate you having me here.
Everything. And but when you buy these amazing resources, please leave a review for Elle on wherever you're buying your resources, and go over to Elle's podcast and leave a review. Share it with somebody that could use this message through Elle's podcast. Again, all the links in the show notes. But that really does help as we create content and send it out into the world for you to share it. So I'm not asking you to share my podcast. I'm asking you to share Elle's podcast and to review her books and everything she does. Thank you all for being part of the podcast.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Jumping here at the very end, I want to thank you for coming. We have listeners around the world, and I got to tell you, as a podcaster, it is so great to hear back from the people who listen to the show. Now, you are still here. The podcast's over. Like, we're sweeping up and putting the chairs away. You're still here. So, hi. I would love to talk to you. No, I really, really would. I would love to hear your voice. I would love to hear from you through email. You can do all that at livingthenextchapter.com. I say it fast because I love it. Living the Next Chapter. It's the name of the podcast. .com. How's that for easy? Right? Right. So come on over there and let's have a conversation. You can set up time in my calendar. You can, air quote here, book. Book time in my calendar. Book next chapter. Let's have a conversation. Thanks for being here. See you on the next one. Cheers.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.